Okay. Okay. What's this here? Okay. One moment here, everyone. How's everyone doing? I hope everyone's having a great day today. Okay, happy Friday, everyone. Best day of the week. Okay, and I'll have the next part of Metal Gear Solid for you guys also tonight. Okay. How's everyone doing? My day's been good. How are you guys? What do I think of the characters in Metal Gear Solid 3? Well, I'm honestly surprised by how sloppy Ocelot is, but he's a lot younger. Yeah, I will replay Red Dead Redemption 2. I just don't know when, because I just gotta... There's a bunch of games I still gotta finish this year before I get to it. You're not late, April. Enjoying Metal Gear Solid 3? Yeah, I am. The boss is the same voice actor as Pearl from SpongeBob. Really? I didn't know that. I just reached rank 300 on Red Dead Online. Oh, that's pretty, cool, Void. I think that rank 1000, I think, is the max rank. But if you want to rank up quicker, put on free aim, because every NPC you kill in free aim will give you 20 extra XP, and it's actually helped you rank up pretty quickly. Will I do Jimmy's Vendetta and Mafia 2? Yes, and I'll do Joe's Adventures. Metal Gear Solid 3 Delta is BS. Wait, why do you think that, Samuel? Thank you for the super chat also. Do associates in the Mafia have to give a cut to the boss as well? It depends. It depends on what they're doing specifically. If it's, if they are not working for the family and it's, you know, something of their own, I don't think so, not really. But if it's something directly tied to the family business or involved with the family, then yes, they have to. Happy birthday to Dante Bosco. Isn't that the guy who plays as Zuko in Avatar? I never finished Mafia 3 because I just never had the time to, but we're gonna do a full playthrough of it. Coming up after Mafia 2 is done. What's the cause of the Soviet Union's collapse? Chernobyl is one of them. The Afghanistan war. The US started spending a lot more money on defense, and the Soviets tried to spend more to keep up, and it bankrupted them. Yeah, I know that, Gunner. I mistook it for 1911 at first, but I realized my mistake. By the way, people told me in Metal Gear Solid 3 that I'm not supposed to kill anyone. That there's like a punishment if you kill too many people. Like, what's that about? Without spoilers, exactly. Because all I've been doing is it's been knocking people out and tranquilizing them. That's what I've just been doing. I'm gonna have the next part uploaded, but that's all I pretty much did is I just knocked everyone out and tranquilized them. Yeah, I'll play the Mafia 2 DLCs. Yeah, my condolences. I'm sorry about your friend, Dreadnought Warrior. I'll give you one word. That. Wait, so like the bosses, can you kill the bosses then? Have you ever played Batman Arkham games before you? And you should play them channel one day. And Arkham City is my favorite Arkham game. It has the best soundtracks. I've never really played them. I have one of the Batman Arkham games. I think it was from PlayStation Plus. I gotta check which one it is. That was like years ago. Oh, hey Ant, how are you doing? But I haven't I've never really been into them much, Clone Force. But I will play those one day because I know that is a heavily requested game, and usually the heavily requested games I play them. So I will get to it one day. Just this year, I'm just packed with so much stuff like Black Ops 2, Black Ops 7, Battlefield, you know, Battlefield 6. Ghost of Yote, Mafia 3, a lot of stuff. Yeah, I know about that, Gunner. Volgan does sound like look like a psychopath to me. Oh, there's a target. Imagine Claude and the boss from Saints Row 2 teaming up. That'll be a little weird of a team up because Claude wouldn't say anything, but yeah, they would be really dangerous together. Thank you, Exquisite Vibes. I wonder how Claude and the GTA Online protagonist would interact. No, I never played Black Ops 2 on the channel.
Back there. Move. You ain't supposed to be here. Get lost. You don't belong there. Out. Hey, be off with you. Why don't you just leave?
Killed so many of these guys already quietly. Wasanga Beach Identification Atrocities, Patrick. Wait, what? Vertigo? Thank you for the super chat.
You ain't gonna pay the rent.
Thank you, guys. Arizona got hit with a massive dust storm. It was crazy. What's even like when it's in the isn't a dust storm basically in Arizona a sandstorm, or is there like a difference? Isn't it like the same thing? I mean, I guess dust, it's blowing dust mainly, but because it's in Arizona, wouldn't it be a sandstorm technically? But yeah, I guess I don't know. I've seen dust storms and I've seen tornadoes before, and they are not good at all. When I saw a dust storm happen once, when a dust storm no, I probably will, Vertigo. You just gotta be patient with me. I do those retail videos, also, and, like, I'm trying to do more crazy current events videos. And that lore video is coming along very nicely, the Mafia one. Very, very nicely.
I told you, get lost.
Almost done. It'll be up this weekend. Man, this guy's already running away here. Thank you, Sam Rashi. Thank you, dude.
Oh, Lordy.
Tommy said it was Salieri who ordered that.
Oh, Lordy. I will bust your head open. Jesus.
I will, Vertigo.
Oh, Lord above.
Oh no, I know about that. When there was a dust storm where I lived in the Midwest, I was outside for a little bit because I was driving when it started, and what happened was I guess I must have inhaled something, and I was coughing for the next month and a half. It was not fun. You know, buying the mansions when they come out in GTA later this year. But think about that. This update that's coming out in December for GTA is our final GTA Online DLC. It's our last one. GTA Online is older than some players that play it. Is it depressing playing Red Dead Online knowing it's abandoned? It does hurt in a way, but I kept my promise to you guys that I would do it every single week, you know, every Friday, and I never broke that promise, and I still do enjoy it. I still like playing it. I like the gunplay, and I like exploring the map, and I like playing with friends. But but yeah, it is depressing that it was what happened to it. Do you think Britain, the West German government,
Oh, no.
should have asked Britain for assistance to build their intelligence agency or Abwehr members who defied the Nazis? The problem with the West German government is there was a lot of corruption in it. After the war, there was a lot of like Nazis that had been sentenced to prison for life, and then the West German courts, who were sympathetic to them, would release them after just a couple of years and saying, oh, you know, they're sick and dying, but then they would live for another 20 or 30 years. I've never really watched Sons of Anarchy. I know it's the biker show, but I've never really watched it. Yeah, the thing about Red Dead Online is that Red Dead Online should have at least gotten one final big update. If they were going to cancel it, they should have gotten, you know, one big final update. But just to abandon it like that just sucked. I remember people asked me if I could still keep doing Red Dead content, and I never planned on, you know, stopping it. And I kept my promise, and I did a Red Dead stream every Friday for 4 years now, since it's been abandoned. Is the PPSH a good gun? Yeah, I would say so. The thing about the PPSH is the round drum. The round drum has a habit of jamming. That's actually why box magazines were made, is so that the gun would not jam as frequently. It has a very high fire rate, but it's not the most accurate SMG. I was thinking about doing a crazy current events story on that Raha Jackson attack. I actually saw the video. I did see the video the other day, and I was considering making a crazy current events video about it. The reason I waited a couple days was because I wanted to see if Stu would recover, and he's recovering right now. He's conscious, and yeah, and to see if Raha is gonna, you know, Raja is gonna or however you say his name, is gonna face any kind of you know, legal actions. Was Tino a horrible consigliere, the worst in the entire Mafia series? Pearl, do you have this fighting game called My Heroes Won Justice? No. On the death of Jean Pormano, a French streamer who got tortured to death on Kick. I heard about that. A lot of people have told me about that. I have to read the entire story, but that's horrible. But if somebody has caused his death, they should be arrested and, you know, put in prison. I think Raha was suffering from a concussion when that happened. That's not an excuse. You know, you can't do something like that to people. And you know, and the thing is though is, and I'm not saying you're defending him, Zach, by the way, but you know, he's gonna basically make up any kind of excuse to basically get out of that situation right now, so that he doesn't face the consequences. But here's what I will tell you about that situation. I watched the whole video, I watched the whole thing, and my analysis on that is he's guilty as hell. He is absolutely guilty as hell. Now look, when there was that situation when they were in the parking lot and then Psycho Stu, you know, hit him on the head with the can, if he would have punched, you know, Stu back right there, like a single time in the face, that probably would have been justified, because he didn't know Stu was going to keep attacking or not, because it was, you know, he just smashed a can on his head. But then afterwards, you know, Stu thought that it was part of the script. And, you know, he thought that was, you know, what he was supposed to do. And then he later apologized to him, and Raha, like, accepted the apology. He said, you know, it's fine, it's fine. And then he was supposed to do some stunt where he was supposed to, you know, jump in the ring and do some minor attack on him, but not to, like, that extent. But, like, when Raha is streaming, and you see that scene when he's outside the ring, he's like, I'm gonna hurt him bad. When he's saying, like, I'm gonna hurt him bad, that's premeditated at that point. Because in order to prove a murder charge, you need to prove that it's planned. That's the difference between manslaughter and murder. Is manslaughter is a spree of the moment killing. It's like a killing that just happens right then and there. It's not planned. Murder is something that's planned. And to charge somebody with attempted murder, you have to prove that there was planning involved in that. And when he's on that stream and he's like, I'm gonna hurt this guy bad, that pretty much at that point confirms that it's premeditated, and you could basically argue that it was attempted murder. Now, when people are saying, oh, it's battery, that is not battery. I would say that that's attempted murder. That's not battery. Battery is basically like a severe version of assault. That's what it is. Battery is when you're basically beating somebody up. That's what battery is. But there's a difference between beating somebody up and trying to kill somebody. And punching somebody that many times in the face, that can definitely kill somebody. So I will say he is pretty much, you know, guilty as hell, and I hope he suffers the consequences. Hey man, I love your lore and playthroughs videos. Keep it up, dude, and ignore the haters, man. So keep being yourself. And my favorite video you made is Riders Red Flags. Thank you, Sem. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thank you, dude, for the super chat. Where are you heading? I don't know. I was just exploring. I guess I'll go to Valentine. What I gotta ask, what state did this happen in? What state did this Raha Jackson fight happen in? Where was this exactly? Can somebody tell me what the location where it was? Sniper Elite DLC Pro, just asking. It's Sniper Elite Resistance DLC. There's 3 DLC missions that I still have to do. I'll do them later in this year. Do watch Chicago PD. Oh, Chicago PD, the series. Yeah. And I know Zach wanted me to watch Blue Bloods too. He wanted me to watch that one. Oh, this happened in California. If this happened in California, I don't expect him to be fully punished if this happened in California. If this happened in like a place like Texas or something like that, he'd be done. But like, you know, California, just, you know, not to get into the whole politics of it, but it's just the legal system in California, I think, is broken. I think that a lot of times people get slapped on the wrist instead of getting, you know, fully punished for what they've done. Why did he even do that? Was there prior beef? I don't understand. Anyways, 24 months. Thank you for being a member of my channel for 2 years. Thank you, Greatest Whippin. I don't think there was any beef before that. Because I think that's the first time that he met Psycho Stu. I don't think he's ever met Psycho Stu before that. And the beef, you could make the argument, started when, you know, Stu smashed that can on his head. But he apologized afterwards. And Raha didn't punch him after that. If Raha punched him then and there, like a single time, because he didn't know if it would, you know, be a continuous attack, then you could argue that it was self-defense. But, you know, an hour or so later, when they're actually wrestling, and then, you know, he just jumps on top of him and is, like, you know, punching him repeatedly in the face when he's, you know, unconscious, that is pretty much a attempted murder, I would say that. In Florida, it would be a aggravated battery for deadly weapon. Yeah, probably. I mean, didn't he use his fist? So I don't know if that would, you know, really count as a weapon, but I took some points off on your part of Metal Gear Solid 3 Delta. You missed the Dragunov right when you landed, and under the bridge, you can't get them unless you backtrack your game. So I can't get the Dragunov anymore then, Phoenix? Would I buy a $2,000 used car that was impounded because registration was expired and the car was worth $1,000? No. The thing about me is if I'm buying a car, I'm buying a car usually like under 10,000, but I am not buying a car that's like that amount because that's too old, and at that point it's probably gonna have problems. So that's what I would say about that is. Damn, I gotta get up. How do I get up here? Wait, so I have to do the prologue all over again, Phoenix? When Kim Jong-un took over North Korea as a new dictator, was there any hope he would be different? A little bit. Kim Jong-un's sushi chef, before he escaped to Japan, had actually said that when he knew Kim Jong-un when he was younger, that he promised that when he ruled one day that he would reform, he would help, poor people, that he would make, North Korea a better place for everyone, but that did not, none of that happened. So maybe there was some hope that he would change things when he came to power, but, he proved to be just as bad as his father. You can get a Dragonaut Sniper on later 2 or 3 parts. Oh, I can? Okay. And Cayo Perico, there's a zombie Gustavo who keeps spawning panthers, huh? That's the guy that, Rubio killed. There's not going to be any DLC for Mafia the Old Country, I can't imagine that. Wait, what do you mean, Phoenix? I'm confused right now. What are you talking about? What do you mean? No, I'm probably still wearing my tactical stuff, William.
This ain't no wagon train. Get the hell out.
You can also kill Ocelot for knocking him out cold. You get a trophy and create a paradox after meeting Sokolov. Huh. Does it actually change the story? No, it's game over? Oh.
You're gonna meet your mate.
Crap, that machine gun. Damn. How many years do you think Raha deserves for what he did? Oh, at least more than a decade.
Hope you're ready to die. I'm gonna kill you, son. On to this world now.
Target escaped. Oh, no. Oh, well. Oh, so I can just go back there and find it and find the night vision goggles? Okay. Wait, where is the Dragunov and the night vision goggles in Metal Gear Solid 3? Where do I have to find it? Yeah. I think I did hear about that. Oh, if you kill him. And was that in the original too, William? He deserves 20 years in the can. Thank you, Glover Fox, for the super chat. That's reference to Sopranos. Have a good one. Thank you, Netis Ghost. Thanks, dude. Was that the one where they seized money also? In Florida, You like historical anime, don't you? Yeah. Usually if it's something historical, I'll like watching it. Who is the most incompetent dictator in your opinion? I would have to think. In North America, the most incompetent dictator in North American history would have to be General Santa Anna, dictator of Mexico. The most incompetent dictator in European history would probably be... Oh, I have to think about this one. Probably be Mussolini. Yeah, probably Mussolini. He failed so many things. Constant disaster to disaster. I have to think. Yeah, Tsar Nicholas was a... Yeah, I guess Tsar Nicholas maybe, I guess, because he's a king, but yeah, you could make the argument he's extremely incompetent, yeah. In Asia, the most incompetent dictator would be, I'd probably put it at Mao Zedong because of the fact that his stupid policies had caused, you know, over 50 million deaths.
You got a real problem, don't you?
Yeah, it probably the most incompetent dictator in history would probably be Mao Zedong. I would say that, yeah, probably. Hitler was pretty incompetent as well, but he wasn't as incompetent as Mussolini. Mussolini had way more disasters than him, like so many, you know, military disasters. I don't think that Italy, when you really think about it, I don't think that Italy won one major operation in World War II. I don't think they had, yeah, I don't think they won one major operation on their own in World War II, when you really think about it. I don't think they have. You have great videos. Thank you, Jordan. People are real desperate to ignore the story's ending as written for Mafia the Old Country and act like Leo isn't good enough connection between the games. They want Isabella and Edsel to be related to another big character, Joe Barbaro. Yeah, the thing is, I don't understand these conspiracies of like saying that like Joe is related to Enzo and all this stuff. It makes no sense because Joe Barbaro was born in what, 1926? 1926, that's when he was born. And if Isabella's, you know, child was, you know, born in what, 1908, that means that what, they would have been, you know, 19, you know, 19 about if they had Joe as a child. I don't believe that personally. Like, it's, nah. I don't think there's any relation whatsoever to Joe making composite creativity. Oh yeah, Idi Amin. I would make the, well, it's, crap. When it comes to African dictators, yeah, Idi Amin was a very incompetent dictator, but if you're talking about the most incompetent dictator in African history, it has to be either Idi Amin or Robert Mugabe. Robert Mugabe was extremely incompetent as well. You know, he caused massive inflation in Zimbabwe, like he completely destroyed Zimbabwe's economy. And Idi Amin destroyed his country through a stupid war. He started a war of Tanzania. Yeah. Watch Mafia 2 if FFL form 4 can own full MG42. Thank you for the super chat bell system. I don't know that much. Hang on, I'll answer your question in a moment. Give me just one moment here. Just gotta deal with this. That's not how you pronounce Tanzania. I'm sorry if I messed it up. Okay, so crap. About owning an MG42. It depends on the state that you live in. So obviously it depends on the state. But if, let's say that you're in a state where you can own that type of firearm, right? To own an MG42 that would be fully automatic, like the actual World War II thing, you would need a Class 3 license, and that would be, you know, you'd have to go through the ATF to get that, and that would just be a, you know, it would just be extremely complicated. And not everyone gets that type of license. The people that get that type of license are usually people that, like, are making TV shows. So if you're making, like, a World War II TV show and you want to show an MG42, you could probably get a license to get, like, these automatic World War II guns. If you are, like, a museum and you want the actual thing in there, then yes, you know, probably that too. Or if you're, like, a really big collector, but that's a little bit more difficult to prove. However, though, if the MG42 was configured to only fire semi-automatic, like it does not fire automatic anymore, it only fires semi-automatic, then yes, in a lot of states, you should be able to buy that. Hey, Epic Gamer, thank you for the super chat. Oh, crap. Hang on. Okay, that was a lot of guys to kill there. Beretta M38, yes, that's it, Manaf, you're right. And the Beretta M38 was actually a decent submachine gun. It was actually one of the best weapons Italy made. Hitler did not listen to any kind of general. He would constantly interfere in his generals' plans and tell his generals what they can and can't do, and it would just irritate a lot of generals, because a lot of generals were forced to follow stupid orders. one of the worst orders that Hitler gave while commanding troops was no retreat. He did not allow any kind of retreat, even tactical retreats. He did not allow it, and this basically caused entire armies and battalions to be surrounded and destroyed. What is better, MP40 or Thompson drum mag? The Thompsons with drum mags, they weren't really used in Europe. I guess maybe some, but in the Pacific, Thompsons with drum mags were much more common because it was close quarter environments. If you're asking me what SMG do I think is better, probably the MP40, because the MP40 was more cost effective, it was cheaper to produce, quicker to produce, and it doesn't have as much recoil also. The Thompson does fire a more powerful cartridge, 45 ACP, where MP40 fires 9mm Parabellum, but stopping power isn't always the most important thing. You could hit something more accurately with an MP40 than you could with a Thompson. Are you saying World War II would succeed for the Axis if Hitler was a war genius? The thing is, if Hitler was a war genius, he would have never invaded the Soviet Union. That was the stupidest, that was the stupidest, military, the two stupidest military mistakes that ever happened in history. There are two. And they happened in the exact same year. Do you know what the two stupidest military mistakes in history were? Japan bombing Pearl Harbor was one, and Germany invading the Soviet Union was the other. Those are the two stupidest military decisions in history. Is literally those two decisions basically destroyed both empires. So it was literally invading the Soviet Union. That was the stupidest decision that Hitler had made. And there was a lot of generals that actually warned Hitler, told him that the Soviet Union could not be conquered like this, that we would run out of supplies would get cut off, it's too big, it's too vast, they have too many troops. Hitler underestimated the size of the Soviet army, how many divisions they had, how many battalions they had, and he also underestimated their industry. Because the thing about that is that German industry could not stop, German planes could not stop Soviet industry. Because the Soviets would just make a lot of their factories past the Ural Mountains, and they would build tanks, weapons, and they would just put it on armored trains, and they would just ship it to the front line. And German planes could not get that far. While Soviet planes and American planes could actually reach, German factories and bomb them. And so it was a lost, war from, day one when he invaded the Soviet Union. They were never gonna, conquer it. It was just a stupid decision. I'm finally done with Tobin Winfield at 5 stars. Oh, you did it? Did you do it solo, Minion Dave? That is the worst, bounty in the game. Yeah, that is the worst one. Tobin Winfield is, oh man, it's really annoying. Who was abusive to the staff, Reese? Wait, what are you talking about? You did it solo. I would give you a medal, because doing Tobin Winfield solo on 5 stars, that's impressive. Oh yeah, I'll play Joe's Adventures. I'll also play the Jimmy DLCs, both of them. Can you check my comments? Sure. Let me look, Phoenix. You can eat almost anything. Alligators, snakes, and berries, huh? Do you have to regularly eat? Like, is there, like, hunger in the game? You can use CQC on mushrooms and pick them up as food. You can eat almost anything, but be careful. Snake will say, I've had enough, meaning he's full. If he eats too much, he'll throw up. Oh, okay, Phoenix. Will I play Mafia 3? Yes, after I'm done with Mafia 2. Thank you, Composite Creativity. Hey, Pro, I tried to like Mafia 2, but the game has issues such as gameplay, voice acting, and cutscenes. I didn't care too much about the story because of the voice acting and the cutscenes. Well, Mafia 2 Definitive Edition has some issues. It does. It doesn't run as well as the original version of Mafia. There's some glitches. Like, I had the gas station attendant that was teleporting through my car on the last part. And I had cops who would not spawn on when you're running on the rooftops with Joe. So there's issues with that. Okay, let me start up another one here. Are gas station attendants really still a thing? I think New Jersey, yeah. I think New Jersey is that one state where you cannot pump your gas. They have to pump the gas for you. Did you see that Angry Joe show gave Mafia the Old Country 4 out of 10? That review was so bad. And they said none of the characters mattered in the story. What? I gotta watch that review. But that's like... Why would he give them a 4 out of 10? No, that's... I gotta check out this review a little bit later. Thank you, Angelo. You know what I thought Angry Joe's worst review was? I thought his worst review was... It was probably the Kane and Lynch 2 review. That's what I was saying when Angry Joe kept saying that Kane and Lynch 2 was like a horrible game. I think that was his worst review. I like Kane and Lynch 2. It's actually one of my favorite crime games. I thought it was a great game. I still play it to this day. I do live streams on it. So it's like I never agreed with his take on Kane and Lynch 2. I thought Kane and Lynch 2 was a great game. The only thing I did agree with Angry Joe on Kane and Lynch 2 is I agreed with him that it's way too short, like 4 hours. That is way too short for a story. So I will agree with him on that. The story is way too short. But other than that, the story, the missions, the multiplayer, the gunplay, it was all pretty good for the most part. It was fun. The camera was janky, yes, but here's the thing. Here's what Angry Joe isn't saying. You can actually turn off the shaky camera. So if you don't like it, you can turn it off. Thank you for the awesome content, man. You're a legend. The Mafia videos and history lore you do is great. Much respect. Thank you, somebody32. Thanks for the support, dude. I didn't like his review on Alpha Protocol, which I thought was a great game. I actually did play Alpha Protocol. I played that game when I was a kid on PS3. I remember that game too. It's made by the same people that made Fallout New Vegas, I think. Alpha Protocol is actually a pretty good game. I remember they had the Taiwan setting, the Saudi Arabia setting, the Moscow setting, and the Rome setting. It was actually, all of the choices that you could make in the story is actually a pretty fun game. You were awesome playing Kane and Lynch 2. Thank you, Phoenix. Have you seen his review on Mindside? No. I gotta see that one. Do you think they would have dropped the nuke on Berlin? Who are you talking about? The Soviets? If they had it at the start of the war, yes. If they had it near the end of the war, probably no, because they were going to take Berlin anyways. Which cutscene is that, Milk, Marston? Which cutscene was that glitches? I know about that. Pro, during the Bosnian War, Serbian forces used UN peacekeepers as hostages and used them as human shields to prevent NATO from firing at them. The UN failed really badly in Yugoslavia. They also failed in Rwanda, and they failed in East Timor. It's like every time that there's a and the thing is, all three of those wars, Yugoslavia, Rwanda, and East Timor, all three of those wars were having genocide and mass murders, like massacres happening, and the UN failed to stop it each time. Pro, why is there a massive amount of people of Italian ancestry in the USA? Italian immigration, especially to places like New York and New Jersey. There was so much Italian immigration, millions of people in the past century. Is there a video game reviewer that you share the most common views on? I wouldn't say necessarily a video game. I mean, I guess you could make him say he's a video game reviewer. He doesn't do a lot of reviews, but if anybody knows Wilsey. Wilsey does like playthroughs a lot of games. He's a friend of mine. He does no commentary playthroughs. Me and Wilsey agree a lot on a lot of the games that we play. We have pretty similar views on that. We play pretty similar games on our channels.
Get the hell away from here. You wanna die, huh? I'll make you
When he played as that Tibetan guy in Boondocks, that was so funny. I remember that. I played the Infamous games when I was a kid. I played Infamous 1 and 2, and I played Second Son. I beat all 3 of them. But I've never done them on the channel. But yeah, I can do them on the channel in the future.
Hey, can you loosen this up?
Also, I don't know why so many people didn't like Infamous Second Son. I actually liked Infamous Second Son. I thought it was a decent game, so I don't know why so many people disliked Infamous Second Son. They never made another Infamous game after that. That was it. It was done.
Jesus Christ.
I'm not trying to spoil the game. When you played the game for the first time, did you like Henry at first before it happened in the story? Not really, too. You know, I was kind of pissed off about what happened to him, but I never necessarily liked him as a character, and the reason is because I blamed him for what happened to Vito, basically. Thank you, Mr. Jesus, for the super chat. What games do I play on and off streams? I started playing Empire of Sin recently. It's kind of like a strategy game like XCOM with gangsters in the 1920s. I want to get all the trophies in it. I play Hell Let Loose. Hell Let Loose is a game I play a lot. Like Hell Let Loose, if anyone knows that one. World War II game. I'm a very high level in Hell Let Loose. Does Hell Let Loose have a story mode? No. Is Hell Let Loose hard to play? Yes. It can be a very difficult game. The thing is, Hell Let Loose is played very differently than most other shooters. You have to like, Hell Let Loose is the closest thing that you'll get to actual real World War II combat. Like, it is the most realistic game that I've played when it comes to World War II combat. Is the closest thing that I've seen to actual World War II combat. So, if you want to know what the battles in World War II were really fought like Hell Let Loose is like probably the most accurate depiction of that. But, you know, you cannot just run and gun. You can't just go, you know, Rambo and kill everyone. It is a much more difficult game. It's only multiplayer too, so it's a game that requires patience. You gotta know what you're doing, and a lot of times the matches on Hell Let Loose can stretch out for, you know, over 90 minutes. What caused the Battle of Stalingrad to be so much more violent and brutal than with the casualty count over battles like Berlin, which had a massive number of troops and civilians, or even battles between Japan and China? The reason that Stalingrad became such a you know, large battle with so many casualties is because both sides knew that if they had lost Stalingrad, that would be pretty much the beginning of the end. That's what both sides knew. Now, the thing is, Germany could not have you know, fully conquered the Soviet Union, but they could have basically crippled them and had reached some kind of peace settlement with them that was favorable on their terms. If Germany had taken the Stalingrad, because the reason that Germany was trying to take Stalingrad is because they were trying to push down towards Azerbaijan, and they were trying to go in the Caucasus, and they were trying to take the oil fields in Baku. Like, Baku had huge amounts of oil fields. That's actually where Germany got most of their gas from Baku before they teamed up with Romania, when the Soviet Union was still friendly with them. And so they were trying to get to that. If they had actually gotten those oil fields, they could basically use that to conquer huge other parts of the Soviet Union, and would have crippled the Soviet economy. And Germany knew also that if they didn't take Stalingrad, that was it, that the Sixth Army would have gotten destroyed, and they would have been put into a war of attrition, which means a war of supplies at that point, trying to drag each other out, not trying to fully conquer each other. So it was pretty much both sides knew that if they had, you know, lost Stalingrad, that it would be the beginning of the end. And so basically Hitler and Stalin had thrown everything they had at Stalingrad, like just everything they had, both sides, both dictators, and that's pretty much why the battle became what it was. Stalingrad is the largest battle in human history. A lot of people don't know that. It was the largest battle in human history, is the Battle of Stalingrad. Thank you, somebody 32. And also, if you want to know how bad Stalingrad was, how bad of a battle it was, the battle went on for 6 months, roughly around half a year, and 10,000 people died every day in that one battle alone. Every day over 10,000 people died. So just think about that. That is how gruesome Stalingrad was. That's how bad that battle was. I remember how mad you were about how Soap died. I heard a joke where it wasn't Soap that died, it was his twin brother Shampoo. Ew, I was thinking Fope. Yeah, well, I still cannot believe they thought it was a good idea to kill off Soap in that game. Like, I was just so stupid. And the thing is, you know the scene in the last game in Modern Warfare 2 when like Hassan is about to kill Soap and then Ghost saves him by sniping Hassan? That scene was completely ruined by Soap dying. It makes me feel like that scene was for nothing now at that point. Oh yeah, Yakuza Kiwami will do in December. Oh yeah, I agree with you, Minion Dave. I don't know what they were thinking. Could Omar from The Wire survive Dexter Morgan? I don't know who Omar from The Wire is. I have to watch that show one day, but I don't know. I know that Dexter is like a serial killer, but I don't know who Omar is. I would like to see them go back to Call of Duty Ghosts one day, like a Ghost 2, but they're not going to do that. One day, Gunner. Was there any war that you struggled learning about because of how dark it was? No, I've read a lot of dark history, but I wouldn't say that necessarily I struggle with it. I do get disturbed by some of the things I've read in history, but I wouldn't say it's to the point where I struggle with it. Am I gonna play the new Dying Light when it comes out? Dying Light the Beast one is not even coming out, but I never even finished Dying Light 1. I gotta finish Dying Light 1 and Dying Light 2 and then Dying Light the Beast. One day I'll play through all of them. I'll do like a whole series when I go through all the games at once. Call of Duty Ghost was the worst Call of Duty to me. Well, Call of Duty Ghost, the multiplayer kind of sucked, but the single player was actually really good. I liked that the main enemies in the multiplayer were like a South American superpower versus like constantly Russia every game. Get FFL so SOT Class 2 can buy a semi-auto MG42 to convert. Oh, the thing about MG42s is I've actually looked up the price on how much they actually cost. They actually cost over $10,000. So it's like usually around that amount. That's how much they cost. I could never imagine spending that much money on a firearm, even if it's the ultimate collector's piece like an MG42. That is just spending that much money on a firearm. I could never do something like that. The most money I ever spent on a World War II firearm is the SVT-40. I bought that for $1,400, and even when I bought that for $1,400, like I felt like it was a hole in my stomach when I bought that because it's how much it just spent so much money on it. It was like so much money on this one rifle. So it's like literally is I could never imagine spending even more than that. Well, I was talking about the semi-automatic ones, Bell, but there are semi-automatic versions of the MG42, but... Oh yeah, the SVT is my favorite rifle. I agree with you on that. It's a great rifle. I think the SVT also is the most underrated World War II gun. I think it is. Oh, thank you, Reese's Puffs, for sponsoring my channel. Thank you, dude. Do I like otters? What, the animal? I don't have anything against them. And just neutral position on it. Thank you, Exquisite Vibes. Hey, Patrick, the temperature in my state, Indiana, has finally toned down, meaning that we are getting close to fall, meaning that it will no longer be hot. Yes, you are right, Isaiah, and I cannot wait for the fall, because I'm tired of the heat.
Get the hell out of here.
Didn't you say the Joker was justified on killing those rich kids? You're talking about the Joker 2019? You mean the subway when he killed those, guys in the subway with the gun? Yes. The first two he was justified. This third, questionable. Kind of questionable. But it's like the first two he was pretty much justified in killing them. That was clear self-defense. What was the reason for the Italian and German immigration? Why didn't German immigrants bring the German language to the U.S.? Well, the thing about that is what was it? You are right that Italian has survived more as a language than German has in America. I don't know the reason for that. I don't know. Like there are still plenty of people that speak Italian in America, but very little Germans. There's very little German-speaking people in America. Very little. Like, I mean, people that learn German, but I'm talking about the immigrants. Is like their descendants. Like, very little of them speak German. But it's the same for a lot of immigrants. Is that the kids of the immigrants will learn the language because they're speaking it to their parents at home. Like, I know Polish. But then what happens is the kids of their kids, they might know like a few phrases and words, but they're largely not going to know the language. And then their kids after that are not going to know the language at all. But I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. Italian has survived more as a language than German. I don't know why in America. So I don't really know the reason for that. Maybe it has to do with like World War I and World War II. Maybe like discrimination at that time. People stopped speaking German. Maybe for that reason. But it was yeah. But also, here's one thing that I'll tell you. German immigration and Italian immigration is pretty different. Because when the Italians immigrated to America, mostly out of poverty reasons. So like in Italy, the Italian immigrants, they usually didn't have a lot of money, and they usually came to America to make money and have a better lives. While the Germans came to America for better lives. One huge reason that a lot of Germans actually came to America was because of discrimination. If you notice, though, a lot of German Americans, if you notice, they're Catholics. And the reason for that is because Germany was a country that was primarily Lutheran, but like it was like 20 or 30% of their population was Catholic. And the Catholics actually suffered a lot of discrimination by the Lutherans. The Lutherans treated the Catholics pretty badly. And so a lot of Germans that actually came to America, they weren't necessarily poor, but they came to America just to get away from the persecution because it was in Germany, they were constantly being persecuted by the Lutherans.
You delivered us our outlaw. Put him in the cell and let him sweat. To each their due. Money's on the table.
Why does the U.S. use imperial units in Fahrenheit? Because we really had no reason to change it, I guess. We've just been using it. And here's the thing about this is when it comes to Fahrenheit, when it comes to Fahrenheit, and let me see here. Hang on one second. I think my next part of Metal Gear Solid is ready. I might as well just post this too. Okay. When it comes to Fahrenheit, though, there's nothing really wrong with using Fahrenheit. I don't know, why some people, think that the U.S. should use Celsius. I know the U.S. is like one of the few countries in the world that uses Fahrenheit. I think there's like one other country that uses Fahrenheit besides the U.S. But the thing is, Fahrenheit has worked for us pretty well as a country for, our history. And the thing about that is, if you change from Fahrenheit to Celsius, it's gonna cause a lot of problems in America. Like a lot of problems. Like people are not gonna be used to that. It's gonna create so many issues. So it's better just to leave it the way it is. Just leave it how it is. Because think about that. Like if somebody says, oh, it's 30 degrees outside in America, 30 degrees would be considered pretty cold. But 30 degrees in like every other place would be pretty hot. 30 degrees Celsius. So that's what I'll say about that. Well, the thing about that is what people this is what I will say Europeans get wrong about Americans all the time. Like, Europeans, like, I've heard Europeans say that, like, Americans don't know how to measure in Celsius, but what they don't know is that in schools in America, we learn Celsius. We learn how to measure in Celsius. When I was in middle school and high school, we learned how to measure in temperature in Celsius. We learned that. We just don't use it as our main metric system, but we did learn it. We did. Most people forget about Celsius, when they get out of high school, but we did learn it when I was in, in high school. But yeah, like, all the people making fun of, like, Americans for saying that they don't know how to read Celsius, those people did not know how to read Fahrenheit when Red Dead Redemption 2 came out, because in this game there's temperature, and people had, people did not know how to read Fahrenheit. So I think it's kind of funny, the people that make fun of, like, Americans for, like, saying they don't know how to read Celsius. A lot of times they themselves, they don't know how to read, Fahrenheit. I don't know, Gunnar. I gotta play those games one day. But yeah, I hope I answered your question there, Minion. But that's the reason is and I guess it's because the U.S. wanted to be a bit different from everybody. That's too part of it. Am I gonna do Delta Forces campaign? You mean like the Somalia campaign? Yeah. When I get the chance, though. Bro, you're European. You're not American. The real Americans are the Native Americans. Well, Native Americans have been here the longest, but I'm American. I was born in this country. I'm Americanized. I'm used to this country. I'm American. I'm not a European. Just because my parents are from Europe doesn't mean I'm a European. Have you heard of Post 10? Sounds like a cousin. What's Post 10? Thank you, Mike, for the super chat. I'll play the Mafia 3 DLCs too. Yes, I'll play those as well. He does videos cleaning out gutters. Deus Ex would be a good game to do. Yeah, I've had requests to do that one before. I could do it too. Do I keep pronouncing the game wrong? I'm from Holland. You ever been? You mean the Netherlands? No, I've never been there. I do know a little bit about, like, Dutch history. I know about Dutch history, and I know a little bit about your country, but I've never been there. I know Sonny Evans is from there. He's another YouTuber I know, but I don't know, I've never been to the country itself. But I do know that in the Netherlands, that it's a very, like, how do I explain it? It's a very canal-like country. Like, it has so many canals, and they go right through, the city. Like, there's so many bridges, and water goes through, water basically goes through, like, most of the cities. And what happens is that people have to park their cars, like, right next to the water, like, right to the edge, to make room, because those streets were designed, like, hundreds of years ago, and they're really tight. They were meant originally for horses, but that's what I know about the Netherlands. Thank you, Bell System, for the super chat, But yeah, you know what other World War II firearm is also really expensive, Bell? You know what one's really expensive? The FG-42. Like, that thing, if that thing ever goes in an auction, like, those things, like, go for, like, 50, 70, 80 grand. Like, depending on what the type of FG-42 it is. It's, like, those things are, like, ridiculously expensive. Like, if somebody owns an FG-42, like, if you sell that thing, you could probably buy a house with it. like, or at least a cheaper house in a more affordable state, but that, or an apartment even, because it's how expensive those things are. So how did your parents end up choosing New York? It was just, I guess, the first destination, the first stop, and that was it. It was like, a lot of immigrants, their dream was to come to New York. Thank you, Vertigo. Do I like the mission Wrong Side of the Tracks? If all you had to do was follow the damn train, CJ. I hated that mission when I was a kid. When I'm an adult now, I don't think the mission is that bad, but when I was a kid, I really hated that mission, David. Thank you for the super chat. Do I think that teachers should be armed? Thank you, Random Fist, for the super chat. It depends. Here's my view on this. I think that if a teacher wants to go through, like, training and be able to carry a firearm, I think she should have that right. So if she, like, goes through training and, wants to carry it, then yes. But if they don't want to, then no, they shouldn't be made to. So if they don't want to, then no. But if they want to, then yes. That's my view on it. The canals in Amsterdam, you mean? Yes. I did the CJ train mission on my iPad, and I only had to restart 3 times. Well, iPad, I can't imagine how difficult that would be on iPad. But, just keep a little bit of a distance. Don't be, like, right next to the train, and, as long as you just keep driving in a straight line, Big Smoke can kill them pretty quickly. Sometimes you can kill them before they even get to the tunnel. Like, before they even get to the tunnel that leads to the outside of the city, you can actually kill all of them if you're really good at that. Hey, RJ. Heck no, all guns should be automatically disarmed upon approach of a school or church. Well, what I will tell you, what I'll tell you about that is it depends on what you have exactly. If you have it, like, when I went to school in New York City, there was metal detectors in schools, and there would be a security officer that would basically be at the front door. If you have something like that, then I guess you don't really need teachers, teachers or, extra security in the schools, but if you don't have, that extra layer of security there, then you're gonna need it. Because, there's bad people that always want to do, horrible things. And I will say this, there was this guy who had committed an armed carjacking in my town in the Midwest. And what happened was the police were actually chasing this guy, and the guy had a gun, and the guy tried to run into a school. It was like a middle school, I think. But he couldn't get into school. You know why he couldn't get into school? Because the doors to the school automatically lock. So what happens is when the doors close, they lock, and they don't open the doors for any other reason. So, like, they don't leave the doors open, they always close them, and so somebody from the outside could not just come in and just, come into the school. So he was not able to get into the school. He probably wanted to take hostages, and the police, took him down outside. They didn't kill him, they arrested him, but that was it. That's how, my town in the Midwest, how it was, is that they would basically just, the doors would be locked, and nobody could get into school because of that. But, I do agree that schools generally need, more protection, more, armed guards, security, and even if teachers, are trained and they want to, then I don't really have anything against it personally. Teachers love their kids and they want to do everything to protect their kids, and so... What is it here? Were metal detectors a little annoying every day or no, since I don't know about that experience, since my high school doesn't have them? The thing is, though, is the high school that my friend ended up going to, like, the middle school, what, 67? Reese's Puffs? The middle school that I went to in New York City was a little rough, but it wasn't like, the worst school. There was much worse schools out there. The high school that my friend ended up going to was very rough. And if I would have probably gone there if I hadn't moved. So in 8th grade, my parents moved, so I didn't get to finish middle school completely in the city, but we moved to Long Island. But the high school that my friend ended up going to, that high school had metal detectors. And about that metal detector, what kids would do is when they still had the older phones, what kids would do is they would take the battery out of their phone, and then it would put a blade inside the battery case, and they would actually get through the metal detector like that. And what happened was there was actually one kid that actually got stabbed because of that. I think he died too. So that was a failure on security's part, but there was like constant fights in that school. It was dangerous. There was like some really bad kids in that school, and I'm grateful I did not go to that school. But there was some pretty bad things that happened at that school.
You little prick.
I'm from Denmark. If you don't know a lot about Danish history, that doesn't surprise me. No, I know a little bit about Danish history. I know that Denmark had actually conquered pretty much all of England at one point. People don't know that, but Denmark actually invaded England. This was in the I think this was the 1100s when this happened. But there was a Danish royal family had actually ruled England for, I think it was like over 100 years. But people don't know that Denmark did actually had a war with England and actually conquered England. Denmark also today, they have, Denmark is north of Germany. That's where that country is. It's right above Germany. They also have Greenland as a territory. Didn't the Romans do that as well? Yes, they did. But yeah, Denmark was a pretty aggressive country in the past. Like a long time ago, it was actually a pretty aggressive country. And the thing about that is, when people think of Denmark, they think of a really, peaceful, chill, country today. But back in the day, there were some pretty big conquerors. People don't really believe me when I tell them they conquered all of England, but they did. Denmark invaded England and they conquered it. As a Lithuanian, I love Polish people. Thank you. I love Lithuanian people too. Thank you, S1, S1 white guy, if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Do I think the Madsen is an excellent machine gun? Well, the Madsen is a Danish machine gun. I know that. It's actually, I think the Madsen is the oldest machine gun still in use today. It came out in 1904. 1904 is when it entered service with Denmark, and it's still in use, 121 years later. Do I drink, Pro? Not really, no. Yesterday I had a glass of wine. There was a barbecue I had with my family. I had a glass of wine during that, but that's at most. I don't know if you can't really count that as drinking. I don't drink beer. I don't drink vodka, liquor, any of that stuff. At most, I'll have a glass of wine or champagne, maybe every few months, but I don't, have anything else besides that. Yes, they did, Elias, too. What methods did Poland do to avoid the Black Death? Poland had border stops. Like, they would not let people into the country if they were sick. Isn't the Maxim MG the oldest in service? I saw photos of it in the Russo-Ukraine war. Yeah, that's also a possibility. But what year did the Maxim come out? It was the 1890s, right? When it came out, it was 1890 something. What were you asking me, Zach? I just lost a legendary Takan Bison Pelt, and second NPC repeater killed me. Now it's gone. I hit them by accident. Oh no. Those animal spawns, those were ridiculous to get, like, the legendary animals. Thank you, Raccoon. I'll tell you a story. You guys remember when Red Dead Online first came out 7 years ago? That when you hunted for animals, if you died, you lost all the pelts on your horse. And I killed, like, 10 deer, and I had their pelts all on my horse, and I had, like, a carcass. And I remember I was in Blackwater. I was going up to the butcher in Blackwater. I was about to sell it, and some guy hit me with an arrow in the face and killed me, like a random player. And I got so mad, I kept killing the player over and over and over again. I actually just dragged him and threw him in the water, right near Blackwater. That's how pissed off I got. So that was like it. I spent like 30 minutes hunting, and then for all my stuff just to be gone because some idiot decided to, kill me. I just kept killing the guy over and over, and I lassoed him and I dragged him in the water right next to a Blackwater. Was what directed to me? Zach? Wait, what do you mean, Zach? What was what directed? Pro, why weren't Germans and Italians put in internment camps the same way Japanese people were placed in internment camps in World War II? Racism. Racism was the primary reason. If there was if they had put Germans and Italians in internment camps, they would have put millions more people in there, and there's a lot of top-level Americans that were of Italian and German background, not as many that were of Japanese background, and so that was the primary reason. Was the Japanese were more easier targets, and it was racism. That was primary. However, though, there were Germans that did get put in internment camps during World War II, but those were Germans that had open Nazi views. So there were some, but you were not put into an internment camp for being just a German. Or German American, but if you had Nazi views, there were specific camps for German Americans. I know that, but if you were Japanese, even if you did not have any views supporting the imperial family or the Empire of Japan, you were put in an internment camp regardless. Okay, sheriff's office here. Yeah, well, I mean, you could say the same thing for a lot of the Cuban revolutionaries, Gunner. A lot of, Batista was Batista was a massive, wait, what's wrong with my chat? Wait, why are you upset with it, Matix? I don't understand. But, a lot of Cubans had fought for Cuba to be a free, country free of Batista's dictatorship, and unfortunately Castro destroyed those dreams. Are they adding the Polish army or resistance fighters in Hell Let Loose? They still have the Polish army plan as a faction that they're going to add. There is the Polish DLC map that's in testing. As for resistance fighters, no, there's no resistance fighters. However, though, you can play as the Polish in Hell Let Loose, but you have to be for the British faction. If you play on the British faction, there's a DLC skin for the British faction where it's a Polish paratrooper, and it gives you the Polish paratrooper uniform and the Polish paratrooper beret, and so you can get that DLC and play as them for the British army. Are the Pilgrims and Puritans considered refugees? I guess in a way, yeah. They were escaping for religious freedom to America. Thank you, Suspect 13. Well, people a lot of times ask me a lot of historical questions because I discuss history a lot. I know history, and people just ask me that. If you want to ask me anything about Red Dead, I'll answer your question, Matix. I'm just answering whatever people ask me. What do you think of the Dushka gun? Isn't the Dushka that giant machine gun that's it's like an anti-air weapon? It's like on the back of pickup trucks. Is that the thing I'm thinking of? Is that Russian huge machine gun with those giant bullets? Is that what I'm thinking of? I'm new to the channel. I really like your Rider video. Thank you, Jack. Thanks, dude. Bar or M1 Garand? M1 Garand. Well, most Germans in America did not display they didn't display pro-Nazi views during the war. But if they had any, they were probably hiding it. But yeah, what happened to the Japanese? That was primarily racially motivated with the internment camps. There was actually a court, the Supreme Court ruled decades later that was actually illegal, and they did compensate the people that were still alive from it. I know that Denmark and Sweden had a war against each other the most in history, nearly 30 years since the 15th century. No, I didn't know about that one. People don't consider Mafia 3 a Mafia game.
There's your money.
What is it? I mean, I guess because the Mafia games were primarily driven by story, and Mafia 3 was more like side activities, and it was just like going one-man army, killing everyone. I guess that might be the reason, Roger. Yeah, I know that, Mark. I'm constantly calling her on the codec. Do I think Lithuania and Poland should join as one country? No, I don't think it would really work. The reason I don't think it would really work is because the Polish and Lithuanian languages are just so they're so much different from each other, and on top of that, when this was tried in the past, like, you know, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, and while the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth had Lithuanian kings like Jagiello, the problem is that the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth was mostly dominated by Poles. So Polish aristocrats, Polish leaders, it was mostly dominated by Poles, even though it was supposed to be a Commonwealth of Lithuania. So I don't think that, you know, the language barriers are so much different, and I don't think that, you know, it would work for Lithuania and Poland to be in a country together today. I know that, you know, during World War II, like the Home Army, which the Polish Home Army had, like, you know, thousands of Lithuanian fighters that were in it. So like Lithuanian resistance and Polish resistance would cooperate a lot during World War II fighting against the Nazis. But and there was some talk between like the Polish resistance and the Lithuanian resistance that, like, after the war they could maybe form like one country again together to resist Soviet, you know, influence, because they were both the Lithuanians and the Poles were scared about the Soviets. Like, you know, that was their, you know, main concern when the, you know, Nazis were defeated, and there was some talk to like form one country, you know, together after that to basically keep each other safe, but it didn't really go anywhere. And also, it was the Soviets were not going to allow something like that to happen. You know, the Soviets ended up dominating both Lithuania and Poland after the war. So it was, that was pretty much the last time in history that's ever really been talked about. September 2 is the day Ho Chi Minh passed away in 1969. Oh. And what do you think of him, by the way, Minion? Pro, the Irma EMP German gun is the most OP gun on Call of Duty World War II. How good was it in real life? What? This is the first time I'm hearing of this gun. What is this? Do you think Sobel would have survived a Normandy landing if he hadn't been reassigned? I'm curious watching Band of Brothers for the first time. Actually, I can answer that question with 100% certainty. If Sobel had been sent into Normandy, I'm telling you this, he would have 100% died. There is no question in my mind, and I know this for a fact. You know how I know? The guy that replaced Sobel, their plane actually got shot down and everyone died on it. So it was, so if Sobel had been sent in, he would have died. So that was it. So that didn't help him survive the war. But the thing about that is, Sobel was not a bad training instructor. He wasn't. He was the problem with Sobel, I would say, I remember I watched Band of Brothers when I was a kid. The problem with Sobel is he took things too far a lot of times, and he held grudges. Like, he made everything personal. Like, he made things very personal, and I think that was his massive problem as an officer, is that he made things so personal. And he made things so personal that there's a huge possibility that if he was actually in combat, that one of his guys could have killed him. There's actually a huge possibility that could have happened, because he always made things so personal. Like for example, like, when he, I remember when he got pissed off at Winters, like when I was, it's been so long since I watched it, but I remember he got pissed at Winters for some stupid violation. Like, it was just something so petty, something so stupid. Somebody in the comments might know exactly what I'm talking about, but I remember he got so mad at him for something. It was something so ridiculous, and he basically told Winters that he could either take the court-martial or take the punishment. And Winters got so pissed off, like he had it, he basically said, I'll take the court-martial, I'll explain at court. And Sobel got really scared because he knew that Winters was then going to explain exactly what, Sobel was doing at the court-martial. So he was expecting him just to take the punishment and move on, but he basically wasn't having it, and he just said, you know what, that's it. But that's the thing, is he took things too personally. He wasn't a bad for training, but it was just the way that he trained his men, the way that he talked to them.
I sure hope this one ain't a talker.
The thing about this is,
And this is yours.
when you are in the military, right? When you are an officer in the military, your men don't have to like you, but they have to respect you. That's the thing about that. And there's a difference between like and respect. Like basically means that you generally like the person, you would hang out with them, you would consider them a friend. Respect means that you know how capable the person is, you know the person, maybe you have your differences with the person, but you know the person isn't stupid, that they can, get things done. That's the difference between respect and liking somebody. And Sobel had no respect from his guys. He had no respect from him. They just did not respect him. And so that's why, he was reassigned primarily for that. It was just, he was just disliked. But do you think that, Minion, or is that or are you just telling me what the schools said? Why were Polish people hated on back then? For two reasons. The Polish people suffered massive discrimination, and this went on until, I would say, even like the 60s and the 70s. Here, what a lot of people don't know, for example, is that Polish people, the Irish, I think it was the Italians, and I think it was the Greeks, were not considered white in, like, most of American history. People don't know that, but they weren't. I don't remember what they were considered, but they were not, it was Poles, Italians, Greeks, the Irish. They were not considered white for, like, most of American history, and there was, like, discrimination against those groups as well. Like, there were signs that said no Polish hiring or no Irish hiring. The reason that the Polish, in the Polish case, the reason that the Polish were hated was for two reasons. Polish people are largely Catholic, and America was largely a Protestant country, and America used to heavily discriminate against Catholics. Like, the Protestants in America really discriminated against Catholics. And the second reason is that Poles are not an Anglo people. Poles are a Slavic people, and so their culture and their language are very different from Americans, which Americans didn't necessarily like the British. They hated the British too, but it was that the British were a lot more culturally similar to Americans, and so that's the reason that the culture, the language, and the religion was different than what most Americans were, and that's where the discrimination comes from. The Irish, the primary reason for the Irish discrimination was because they were Catholic. That was the primary reason for this, that the Irish were just, people were so racist against Irish people. As for Italians, the primary reason for racism against Italians was that they were criminals. That's basically what people thought. It was like back then is that people were, a lot of people assumed that just because somebody was an Italian that they were a criminal. So that was like the most racist police against Italians in America was not New York. The most racist police that treated Italians the worst was the New Orleans Police Department. The New Orleans Police Department literally just went after people for being Italian. So it was they were just a New Orleans was the police were just really scummy. The Poles were hated in the South because most of them sided with the North in the Civil War. That is true. Most Polish people fought for the North in the Civil War. I think it might be, Zombie. But I talked to Unconverting and Sheep Taco Man. I proved that they did it. I can DM you. Unconverting did something illegal. You know my tag. I've been talking to my moderator about this. I did not talk to Unconverting. But I don't believe that my moderator had something, did something bad, because I've known Fernando for years, and he is, I've known him for, 6 years at this point. He's like the nicest guy I've known, and I've never seen him do anything bad. I'm gonna sell Bert Higgins here.
Excellent. The bat is ready to be driven to
When did Britain and America become on good terms?
I can see you are keen. You remind me of myself.
America and Britain became on good terms at the end of World War II.
You know,
That's really when we became the most on good terms, was the end of World War II.
you have the discipline, of course, but listen.
How do I know what, Nikos?
Real secret. You make no compromises. You see a problem, you solve it. You have your gun. I have my ladle. Well, bon voyage. Allez.
Well then you're gonna have to talk to my moderator about that I saw. Or my other moderators, but I don't know fully what's going on. See here, what is it? What were Denmark's colonies? Greenland. What else did they have? Was Greenland, and they had something else. I think, was Iceland part of Denmark at one point? I think Iceland might have been part of Denmark too. Faroe Islands? Oh, I don't know those. Remember the draft riots that were in New York? Oh yeah, those were really bad. The draft riots are the second worst time in New York's history. The first would be 9/11, but the draft riots were the second worst event that happened in New York's history. Were cowboy duels real? Yes and no. Here's the thing is, cowboy duels did happen, but they didn't happen the way that you see in movies and games. And in real life, they were way more boring than like you would see in like a movie or a TV show or a game. Basically, so here's the thing is, when you play these movies or these games and you see like a cowboy duel in the Wild West, what basically happens is there's like two guys, they have a problem with each other. Usually one guy's a good guy, one guy's like an outlaw. They meet in like the center of town, like right in the town, and they're about to like draw. They're just standing at each other over the sunset. And then what happens is like everybody's looking like, oh, they're opening their windows. They're like looking from the side. Everybody's like watching the duel as it's happening. That's it. And then they both draw on each other. That did not happen. So like, you know, when you see that in movies and games where like they're standing in the middle of the town and they just draw each other, that didn't happen. And the reason for that is because the sheriffs chased them out of the towns. Everybody that was doing that stuff. Because when there's a duel in the middle of a town, a bullet can just basically go anywhere and kill anybody, and can damage property, can kill some, you know, a stray bullet can go somewhere and hurt and kill somebody else. And so what typically happened was, if there was a duel, the sheriff will basically tell them, if you have a problem with each other, you guys want to duel, you guys go and do it outside of the town. And what they would do is maybe they would go like, you know, a couple 100 meters outside of the town in some like open field outside of the town, and they would just stand there and they would just duel each other. That's what would happen. So it wasn't like that they were just be in the middle of the town and they would just be shooting at each other. You see that in movies and games, but that, for the most part, that really did not happen. When the duels were happening, they were typically happening outside of towns in some open fields. It wasn't like just, yeah. Oh, crap. No, you can speak to Zamfected, Isoff, but I don't really get involved in drama or like, you know, stuff. I just usually, my moderators get involved in stuff like that. I don't, I hope everything gets resolved, but I don't get involved in like drama and stuff like that. What's your opinion about Greece in World War II? Well, about Greece is Greece absolutely humiliated Italy in World War II. Well, you're gonna have to talk to Zamfected about this than Isoff. He might be in this stream. But what I'll say is about Greece. Mussolini tried to conquer Greece in 1941. I think it was April 1941. He launched an invasion of Greece, and he wanted to conquer his own, a country similar to Hitler. And what happened was it turned into a disaster because the Italian army struggled in the mountains. North Greece is mostly like mountainous terrain, and the Italian army struggled, and the Greek army just ambushed them, and the Italian army nearly got wiped out in invading Greece. And then the Germans ended up helping the Italians, and it helped them take over Greece. Oh, and the person that was I'll answer your question in what was it here? What is it? One person's asking about Switzerland. I'll answer that in a moment here. Oh, and you can also talk to Bernadian there, but what is it about Britain? People were asking me. One guy was asking me in the comments, when did Britain and America stop hating each other? Britain and America really stopped hating each other, I would say, at the end of World War II. End of World War II, that's really when they kind of became allies. Now, a lot of people think that it's World War I, where America and Britain became allies. That's not true. When it came to World War I, a lot of Americans were really angry at Britain. Now, here's the thing: is America did not join World War I out of the kindness of their hearts to, help Britain in that conflict. People, the way people frame it is they frame it like America, sympathizing with Britain and, coming to Britain's aid in World War I, but that's not really true. That's more World War II. The reason that the U.S. helped Britain in World War I was because the U.S. had loaned Britain so much money. So, like, American banks had loaned Britain so many loans that they were basically using to, fund their militaries in World War I. And what happened is, at that time in 1917, Russia was pulling out of the war. The revolution happened, and the Russians basically took all of their forces. The Germans took all their forces from the Eastern Front and put them on the Western Front because Russia exited the war. So there was no Eastern Front anymore. And what happened is that Germany had the second largest army in the world. The second one, besides Russia. So the German army outnumbered the British and the French. And there's a huge probability that if the U.S. did not enter World War I, Germany would have won. There's a huge probability Germany would have won because Germany launched the Spring Offensive in March of 1918. It was basically their last attempt to turn the war around. They were just, threw everything they had at the British, hoping that the British and the French, hoping that they would overrun them, but the Americans were there, and the Americans helped greatly in the Spring Offensive, helped turn that around, and they also helped in the Argonne Offensive later in November 1918 fall. They broke through, and when that happened, Germany basically went to the peace negotiations. So could Britain and France have won World War I without America? Possible. Well, it's also possible they could have lost. So if Britain did not pay back those loans, what would have happened is that those American banks would have failed, and those American banks would have failed, and the American economy would have tanked with it. Now, about the loans, Britain and France, they both took American loans. They promised that they would pay the loans back. And in World War I, over 115,000 Americans died. Over 115,000. And a lot of Americans got really mad at Britain during World War I because a lot of Americans, the way that they looked at it is they saw it that it was, a bunch of us are dying for a bunch of these greedy monarchies that are just, colonizing other places. Like, why is this our problem? We're a republic. We don't deal with monarchy here in America. So, why are we going to Europe to defend monarchies? So it was kind of like against the American ideals in the first place. And Britain and France, they got reparations from Germany, after World War I, and they also, took over, like, Syria and Iraq. They carved it up. They, stole land from other countries. They colonized it. They took Germany's African colonies. So they, they just conquered other countries, stole their resources, and what did America also get out of World War One? America didn't really get anything out of World War One, and so a lot of Americans were like, why did we even fight in this conflict? What was even the point of this? It was just stupid. This was dumb. And while Britain and France did promise to pay back the American loans, what a lot of people don't know is that Britain and France were paying American loans with German money. So what Britain and France were doing is they were demanding reparations from Germany at the end of World War One. Germany would pay them a ton, and then they would take that money and give that basically to the U.S. So they were just basically throwing up their debt from America onto Germany. So Germany would, produce the money, it would go to Britain and France, and then Britain and France would give that to America. And by the mid-20s, Germany's economy was already collapsing. And in the early 1930s, Germany's economy had pretty much collapsed at that point. It was, pretty much in the toilet. And so Britain and France were not getting any more money from Germany because their economy was just so terrible. And then Britain and France told America that, why don't you just forget the loans? We're allies. We don't need to pay you back, right? And the U.S. got pretty pissed at Britain and said, no, you got to pay us back. We came into World War I for you. Over 100,000 Americans died fighting your conflict. You got to pay us back for this. And Britain basically started, got really pissed about that and acted like the U.S. was ruining relations. They were ruining some kind of friendship, but, what kind of friendship did we really have? We really didn't have a friendship. It was, they borrowed money from us and they had to pay it back. But, that was basically the backstory. And that's also the reason that Americans didn't want to get involved in World War II at the start. So, like, at the start of World War II, like, the vast majority of the American population was against getting involved. It was, like, I think 70 or 80% of the American public. And the reason for that was because of Britain's role in World War I, is that so many Americans were just basically pissed off about World War I, and they didn't want to get involved in another European war. That was basically the thing about that. So that was basically the whole backstory behind that. So so America really didn't like Britain until, I would say, World War II. It was World War II when we really became allies. We really, we fought against the same people. We fought against the Germans and the Japanese together. So that was it. So, and Britain did help us in Asia. They helped us fight against the Japanese, which we appreciated a lot in America. So they did help us out with that. The Australians did also, and the New Zealanders did too. But that was that special relationship really did not start until World War II. That's when I would say, pretty much. Pro, Stormcloaks or Imperials? Answer that one in a moment. Hear me see. Germany brought countries into World War I. First Belgium, British, and then the U.S. The thing about that is it's debatable whether it was Germany that brought, America into World War I, because you could make the argument that it was Britain who brought America into World War I because they had borrowed so much money from America and they were losing the war at that point. So you could probably make the argument that it was Britain, but also Britain, what they did was they were smuggling weapons into Lusitania. They hid weapons on a civilian ship, which was against international law. You can't do that. You cannot smuggle weapons on a civilian ship, but they did. The British did that. And the ship got sunk. Over 100 Americans died on it. And then they lied to the Americans, and they told the Americans that there was no weapons on the ship. And so you can make the argument that, Britain was had even more of a role for driving America into World War I than Germany did. Belgium was the main reason that Britain jumped into World War I, because Britain had an alliance with Belgium. But the thing about that is it was only a matter of time until Britain was going to jump in there. So even if Belgium did not get attacked, Britain would have jumped into that conflict eventually. Britain really hated Germany. They were competing with each other for control of Central Europe, influence in Central Europe, and they really didn't like Germany being there. Britain actually preferred France over Germany. Thank you, Chuck, for the super chat. You forgot to mention the monarchies were cousins. Yes. Nicholas, Wilhelm, and George. They were all cousins. That is true. Pro, we are closing in on 80 years at the end of World War II in Vietnam, declaring independence after being under Japanese occupation. Yeah, in World War II ended, it was like the beginning of September. It was September 3rd or September 2nd. It might have been, yeah, when World War II officially ended. That was it. Did World War I cause World War II? You can make the argument it did in a way. 44 school shootings before Labor Day has been pretty crazy way to start a school year. Where did you get those statistics for that, Lawrence, if you mind me asking? Any thoughts on Portugal, Pro? Um, Portugal today is, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way when I'm saying this, but Portugal is one of the poorer Western, European countries. Is that a lot of European countries around Portugal, like, France, France, Britain, and Spain, have much higher, incomes than in Portugal. Like Portugal is a more affordable country than those other countries, so it's like, the value of your money goes further, but it is a poorer country if you compare to the other ones. The other things I'll say about Portugal is Portugal at one point did have a very mighty and powerful empire. They were one of the most powerful empires in the world. Portugal controlled Angola in Africa. I know that. They colonized Brazil. Brazil was their largest colony. Portugal also colonized part of India. They colonized Goa. I think that's the region. So it was, I really don't know why Portugal's economy isn't better. Like, I don't know why. I know that Spain is, like, richer than Portugal, but I don't know the reason for that. Like, they're right next to each other, so I don't know if it's what it is, economics or what, but what do I think of the Polish-Lithuanian War in 1919? Well, I don't remember the exact territory that they were fighting for. I know that it was, like, it was different it was right when both countries got independence, and they were both, making claims to different territories. Poland also had a war with Ukraine in 1920. So there was a lot of... But honestly speaking, I wish that we wouldn't have had a conflict, or Poland wouldn't have had a conflict with Lithuania, because Lithuania and Poland have had pretty good history for the most part, so that conflict that happened in 1919 set relations back a very long time. Battle of Shanghai was brutal. I've heard people compare Mafia the Old Country to Ubisoft Slav. No, it's not like, a Ubisoft game. It's way better. Thank you, K Gavinator, for the super chat. Let's see here. Let's see here. Where are we going? Oh, Valentine. Well, that was one of the main reasons that America really got pissed off at Britain. It was because Britain had supported the Confederacy during the Civil War. Now, they didn't provide weapons to the Confederacy, but they did give the Confederacy diplomatic recognition, and they also had done trade openly with the Confederacy, which really aggravated the U.S. and that really made the U.S. really angry when they were doing that. The U.S. did the U.S. after the Civil War. What the U.S. did, a lot of people don't know about this. After the Civil War, the U.S. took a lot of Irish immigrants that were IRA members, like Irish Republican Army members, and yes, the IRA did exist in the 1800s also. The U.S. took a lot of IRA members that were in that time period, and they armed them, and they gave them weapons, and they sent them up into Canada through the Minnesota border. And that was like right after the Civil War. And the U.S. did that primarily because they were just so angry about the they were so angry about Britain's cooperation with the Confederacy in the Civil War. Minion Dave, are you still here? Do I think the Viet Minh were freedom fighters? I think the Viet Minh could be best compared to the 26th of July movement in Cuba. Like, for example, not every single rebel that fought in Cuba was a communist. A lot of Cubans had like fought for their freedom and independence so a lot of them had fought for their independence in the Cuban Revolution. So there was Viet Minh. The Viet Minh, I wouldn't say were overly evil. They were a very left-wing organization. When they took power, they ended up going fully communist at that point. But there was like Viet Minh fighters that were not communist, that were just fighting for like Vietnam's like freedom from France. However, though, if you compare the Viet Cong, for instance, the Viet Cong were evil. The Viet Cong were like a terrorist organization. That was they were a horrible group. Well, I was saying that, Minion Dave, when you were talking about Ho Chi Minh before, you said that that's what you were taught in school, but I asked you, do you believe that stuff? Yeah, I got a lot of money in this game, but it was grinded over time. What do I think of mustard gas? I think mustard gas was a war crime in World War One. It's that was one of the worst weapons ever used in warfare. Stormcloak or Imperial? Here's my view on it. On it. I would propose a third option, a third solution instead of Stormcloaks or Imperials. This is the solution that I would propose to end the Skyrim Civil War. I would propose that Skyrim be an independent country. So Skyrim's independent from the Empire. But what happens is there's conditions, and the conditions are that, everyone who lives in Skyrim currently can become a Skyrim citizen. And they're to be treated fairly to Nords, regardless of what their race is. And the other thing is, I would say that the Skyrim would have a military alliance with the Empire. That would be it. Because I think that would be the better solution, is that they were independent. They could at least make some decisions for themselves. Because one of the things that Nords really hated was Imperials messing in their affairs. I played Scarface The World Is Yours, Jorge. I guess he could have, didn't Torrig want to secede from the Empire anyways? I think that, like, comparing the Rebel Alliance to the Viet Cong is, like, stupid. I think that it's, I don't think you can make a, comparison like that. Is that on purpose, Adrian? What do I think of the current Russian-Ukrainian conflict? I don't want to talk that much about it because it's a modern, conflict that's going on. But what I will ultimately say about this is that war is not going to end until the other is basically, defeated. I cannot imagine, like, the war ending in any other way besides that. Like, the war is either going to end with Russia taking over all of Ukraine, or it's going to end with Russia pulling out of the war. Like, there's a coup in Russia or something like that, and, like, the leadership in Russia gets rid of the current leadership. So both sides are not going to, Ukraine is not going to concede territory, and Russia is not going to pull out. So it's that's basically what I'll say about that. Is that war is not going to stop until one side is basically fully defeated. That's basically how long that war is going to go on for. Hi, Suggesta. What do you mean, Buchan? Could it really lead to World War III? No, I don't think so. Because, it's the thing is, it's really dangerous, and it does increase the risk of World War III dramatically. But the thing about this, at the end of the day, is everyone is going to try to avoid that happening, because both sides know, both NATO and Russia know that the moment that one person fires one missile, it's over for everyone. Everyone's dead. So no one is going to do that in the end. So no, I would not be that panicking and that scared about it. Well, honestly speaking, I will say about this, literally is, when it comes to modern warfare, though, modern warfare is one of the scariest, modern warfare is one of the scariest things that I've, that exists. Like, I think that modern warfare is even scarier than, like, World War II combat. And the reason I say that is because the drones, those things flying around, like, you could just be out, you could step outside for just 1 second, and there's a drone above you. It's so small you don't even see it, and just one click, you're dead. That's it. It does not matter how good of a soldier you are. It does not matter if you're the best soldier in the world. You are dead. The drone finds you, you are dead. That's what's just so terrifying about modern warfare, is that those drones, those things are like it's horror. That is what that is. Those things are just terrifying. Is that at least in a war like World War II, you had more, there was, I don't know how I should describe it, is that in World War II, you would oftentimes die in combat, direct combat, but like, something like that is like, you could just step outside of the barracks for like a moment, and the drone is there, and you're dead. And that's honestly what's just so terrifying about modern warfare, is the drones. The drones are just so terrifying. What's your comment, April? Well, I saw that coming. He's not going to let something like that go, April. Do you think a charismatic president can end the conflict? The thing is, though, is that the two power players that have that can help to end this conflict is India and China. India and China can actually assist in ending this conflict a lot. But basically, to end this conflict, is those countries are going to need to be at the table also. Oh, I didn't know about that, Gazala. Do you think the only way every country in the world would unite is against an alien invasion? The thing is, though, is that, what is it, the only time I can think of in human history, the only time I can think of in human history when almost the entire world was unified, there's only really one time in human history when that happened. And the only time really in human history when almost the entire world was unified together was during World War II. That was pretty much almost it. And I say almost because not every country, because there was country we fought against. But the thing about this is, like, for example, you look at the US and the Soviet Union. They both hated each other. But they hated Nazi Germany more. Everybody hated Nazi Germany. Because Nazi Germany was causing everybody problems. They didn't care if you were, a Soviet or if you were French, they were going to attack you. So, everybody basically hated the Nazis. And the same thing for the Japanese, the Imperial Japanese, is the Imperial Japanese were attacking everybody. And so everybody hated them as well. And so, like, countries that normally would never talk to each other, never, like, unite, everybody worked together to defeat the Nazis and the Japanese because everybody just hated them so much because they were attacking everyone. I think King Torg was debating on seceding from the Empire and could have convinced to do so. Ulfric killed him because he wanted to be king. I think that's a huge possibility, Snowy, for this. Thank you for the super chat. But what I will say also about it is, you know what I really wish? I really wish there was an option where you could help the Reachmen take back the Reach. That. Like, you could help the Reach King. I really wish that like, you could help them actually take over Morphal. I think that would have actually been cool. Like, a little side thing, and then it would have, it would have spilled the Civil War into, like, a different direction. Was Prohibition the worst decision in American history, law-wise? When it comes to passing a specific law, like a bad law in American history, yes. I would say Prohibition was the stupidest law in American history that was passed. It was the dumbest one. But I would say also on top of that, it's not the worst decision in American history, wise. I would say probably the worst decision in American history was not abolishing slavery earlier. I think that's probably the worst one. Because slavery was just a much worse thing, and on top of that, it also led to a civil war. But do you know, there is one point in American history where I can think of where slavery could have been abolished, and that one point where it could have happened in American history is under George Washington. If George Washington wanted to, I think he could have abolished slavery, but George Washington was so scared of southern states, of being a rebellion in southern states, that he never really fully pursued that. Even though Washington himself did not necessarily support slavery, he was just so terrified of the country breaking up that he didn't end up doing that. But the thing about Washington, what people don't know about Washington is that George Washington was the most popular president in American history. He was. George Washington has a higher approval rating than Lincoln. People don't know that. George Washington's approval rating was like 95%. It was like no other president has ever come close to him. It was like 95%. It was like the highest of any president ever in American history. If Washington wanted to, he basically had all the power. He could have abolished slavery at the end of the Civil War. That was it. And people, maybe some states wouldn't have liked that, but they would have listened to him because he was such an admired leader. So that's what I'll say about it. Thank you, somebody32. And yes, Prohibition did empower the American Mafia. It was a stupid decision. And where is that skeleton big? Yes, that is true. The Bureau of Internal Revenue had a lot of connections to the KKK during Prohibition. Screw the Talmor. Yeah, the Talmor were scumbags. Brezhnev was worse than Khrushchev. Yeah, I would say that Khrushchev was a better leader than Brezhnev, yeah. The Trapani family had horrible luck with doctors. What caused the downfall of the Soviet Union? Chernobyl, Afghanistan, and then when the US started spending more money on defense, they tried to spend more money to keep up and they couldn't handle it. Who do I think was the best US president? I think probably George Washington. Despite his flaws, like I said earlier, is that George Washington's biggest mistake was that he did not abolish slavery. But other than that, like without him, we would not have had a country. Lincoln saved the country from, fracturing. But Washington, gave us the country that we have today. Now, I know Washington wasn't a perfect person, but, ultimately without him, we wouldn't have a country. He led us to victory during the Independence War. Why every country military outfit overall is green in today's modern? I could be wrong about that. I guess it's just more for foresty environments. Look at that. We just won that. Nice, right? Pretty good there. I'm gonna pull out here. Want my money back. What do you think the worst thing Ronald Reagan did? The Iran-Contra affair. The Iran-Contra affair. That was probably his worst thing. Well, Teddy Roosevelt wanted to jump into World War I. I think he was way too eager for that. I think that the U.S. should have probably stayed out of World War I. Would George Washington have been broken if he saw the American Civil War? Yes, 100%. It would have destroyed his mental health. What was Russia's biggest blunder? Oh, Russia's had a lot of blunders in history. The stupidest mistake Russia's made in its entire history, the dumbest thing they've ever done, Oh man, I have to really think carefully about that one. The dumbest thing Russia's ever done in its history? I think I have the answer for that. Thinking that communism was a good idea. I think that was, because after that caused so many problems. Everything, so many problems. Let's think about that. At that single decision, you know, going communist, basically think about all the problems it caused them. Out of all the Cold War presidents, which one is staunchly anti-communist? Truman. Truman was like did not tolerate any BS. I think that Truman is one of the best American presidents, and I think he's a very underrated president. You know, he was a really good guy. And the thing about Truman, a lot of people don't know about Truman is Truman also desegregated the military. So he made it, you know, he ended segregation in the military. Truman did try to end segregation in federal, you know, hiring practices, but he was never able to fully do that because Congress kept vetoing it. But it was Truman was the only president in American history that did not go to college. People don't know that. He was the only president who never went to college. So just think about that, is that, you know, you don't need to go to college to be president. You could be like Truman one day. Yeah, he was a very down-to-earth guy. He was a Midwestern farmer. He was also a soldier. You know, he could relate with the common man pretty well. So yeah, Truman I think is a very underrated president. Personally I think Truman is a better president than Roosevelt. You know, I think that Roosevelt, you know, the reason I think Truman's a better president than Roosevelt is because Roosevelt appeased Stalin too much, way too much. Like Truman did not take BS from Stalin, but Roosevelt on the other hand appeased Stalin way too much, and that's what I think his main problem was. Hi, Sir Chancelot. Do you think the Ultor Corporation could have wiped out any rival gang outside of obviously the Saints if they really wanted to? Yeah, probably. Probably, yeah, they could probably wipe out all the other gangs. They use the Ronin for protection, but thank you, Exclusive Vibes, for the super chat. But yeah, they could have wiped out all the other gangs. Here's a weird question. How far can you plead your Fifth Amendment right? We saw Oliver North do it in regards to Contra affair. Is there a limit? Thank you, Somebody32. And I guess I'm going to wrap up the stream here, guys, because I haven't eaten dinner, but I'm going to answer your question, Somebody32, and I'll answer a few more people's questions. You are not, there is a time you cannot plead the Fifth. I'm just trying to think of it. You cannot plead the Fifth if you I think it's you agree to testify. I think it's that it's if you have agreed to give testimony in regards for immunity. I think that's what it is, because you what immunity basically is that if you agree to testify, that you will not be prosecuted for the charges involved in it, but you have to tell the truth. You can't lie. I think if you are granted immunity and you agree to testify, I do not think that you can plead the Fifth. I don't think you can do that at that point. I think you have to testify. So there are moments when you cannot plead the Fifth. There are moments when that happens. Well, Khrushchev wasn't necessarily a good person, but he was a much better leader than Stalin, and he was a better leader than Brezhnev. Brezhnev was a worse leader than him. Just a warning, if you decide to play Metal Gear Solid 4, the game is infamous for having very long cutscenes. Get some popcorn and food. Yeah, you know the thing is, the next part of Metal Gear Solid that I uploaded, Metal Gear Solid 3, I uploaded it like an hour ago. The first 30 minutes of it is just me watching a cutscene. Like, literally just, me just watching cutscenes. And I'm not necessarily complaining, but I'm just not used to that. I'm not used to games that have just such long cutscenes. So, like, I could not imagine it, like, the first 30 minutes of a video would just me be watching cutscenes. But that's it. Yeah, the Metal Gear Solid games are notorious for having very long cutscenes, very long ones. What's wrong, Emu? What is the reason behind Khrushchev being a better leader of the USSR? Because Khrushchev de-escalated situations in East Berlin, and he also de-escalated in the Cuban Missile Crisis. He also Khrushchev de-Stalinized the Soviet Union. He arrested a lot of people that were involved in Stalin's regimes, like Beria, for example. He had Beria shot, which Beria was a horrible, mass murderer. And he had closed a lot of gulags. He wasn't able to close every single gulag, but he closed hundreds of gulags, saving, hundreds of thousands of lives. So he was a communist, he was an authoritarian, he was a dictator. He did kill people, but he's not as, he's nowhere near as bad as Stalin. Like, he's not even 5% as bad as Stalin was. Like, Stalin was like 100 times worse than him. Thank you, Ink, Panification for that super chat. I don't believe you. It's 1899. Just a random Red Dead Redemption 2 quote. Are you talking about the Civil War guy? That guy who thinks that the Civil War is still going on? Is it true that Lenin didn't want Stalin in power? Yes, that is true. But Lenin was not a good man himself. Lenin created the Cheka, which was the first Soviet secret police, and Lenin was responsible for thousands of deaths. So he didn't trust Stalin because he thought Stalin was more power hungry. But Lenin himself is not this hero that people portray him to be. What other countries have had a historically close relationship with Poland? I would say Hungary. Hungary has a very bond with Poland. I would say that the Czech Republic and Slovakia have really good relations with Poland too also. So I would say the Czechs, the Slovaks, and the Hungarians have really good relations with the Poles. Okay, Austria, maybe in more modern times. What's the difference between the Soviet Union and Russia? Russia was the largest state in the Soviet Union. That's the difference between it. But I guess I'll be going here, guys. Thank you guys for watching. And one last thing, for people asking me how Khrushchev was a better leader than Brezhnev, Khrushchev warned Mao Zedong about the Great Leap Forward that Mao Zedong was trying to do, where he was trying to, just nationalize everything. Stalin did the same thing. He tried to nationalize everything and do forced collectivization on farms, and it led to mass starvation. And Khrushchev warned Mao Zedong about that, saying it's going to cause mass starvation in China. And the Soviet parliament accused him of ruining relations with China, and Mao got pissed at him and still went through with it. And Khrushchev was right. He was right. He said that Mao's policies would fail, and they did fail, and they caused a disaster. But I guess we'll be going here, guys. Thank you guys for watching. I hope that you guys enjoyed the stream. If you did, do drop a like, and I will see you guys on the next one. Take care, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend, guys.